The money stop has returned. This is your most important NASCAR betting stop of the day. And it is not just any day. This is the start of throwback weekend at Darlington. It's the Money Stop Mafia. He's Cole Cusumano. I'm little bro Steven Cusumano. And coming off of a great weekend at Martinsville, Cole, we head to Darlington. The NASCAR season rolls on after Denny Hamlin continues to supplant himself, not just as the modern day Mr. Martinsville, finally got back into victory lane at the track that he's led so many laps and dominated that for so long. Not just that, he continues to supplant himself as the bona fide villain in NASCAR, and it's something that has been really awesome to watch over these last several years. Great race. Denny Hamlin back in victory lane. Joe Gibbs Racing continues to look good early in the season.
Yeah, and it was actually a really great call by us. I made the call as we were doing the sleeper pick segment last week. I said I made the call to put Hamlin in the favorites category over the sleepers over Chase Elliott because I felt that he would be more primed to get to victory lane quicker than Chase Elliott. And what do you know? Went out and won that race. And yeah, overall, the race itself, I don't think was incredible. Some cool, fun storylines to come from that with like the Logano and Chastain beef and stuff like that. But I thought it was really cool seeing Denny Hamlin dominate that race and win at Martinsville for his sixth grandfather clock. I know he's developed a really villainous reputation over the years, but it's nice to see a driver like that of his pedigree and that elite status of NASCAR history kind of dominate once again at one of his best tracks and just so they could do it at his age, 44 years old. So something that, we've seen with Kevin Harvick, Tony Stewart, Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson, you name it. As these drivers get to the winning stages of their careers in the Cup Series, you just appreciate when they win much more often, and especially when it's someone like Denny Hamlin who dominates once again at Martinsville. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and snaps a long winless drought for Denny as well. Like you said, I feel like even growing up, whether you had your fandoms or not, you come to appreciate when guys like Denny win late in their careers. It's going to be the same feeling when Kyle Busch gets back to victory lane, and I say when because it's definitely going to happen. As someone like the two of us who grew up watching Kyle Busch, and he was kind of the villain of the sport, and now you see the tides kind of change. It's like the old Batman saying, "You live long enough to be the hero or the villain," or however it goes. Maybe you know how it goes. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but it's pretty much that exact same dynamic. But Denny Hamlin back in victory lane, and we showed out too. Obviously, it's the money stop, so of course we had to make you some bank. Where if you listen to us, Denny Hamlin, as you said, was part of the drivers that we analyzed and recommended. We also had Bubba Wallace finish in third. We had Chase Elliott fourth, Kyle Larson fifth, Ryan Preece, who was my sleeper pick for the win, finished seventh, Joey Logano eighth, Chase Briscoe ninth, and then we had two drivers as well inside the top 16. My winner pick, Ryan Blaney, finished 11th, Zane Smith 16th, and we had three drivers out of 9 finish outside of the top 20. So all things considered, there's a strong week of analysis, as really it always is here on the 5th season of the Money Stop. So with that, let's turn the page. As we look toward what is coming up next, we also look back in the future, as this is throwback week at Darlington, the Goodyear 400. We're going to determine the starting lineup at 1:40 Eastern time on Saturday. And as we take it to the bank, Cole, and try to preview the upcoming race, go into our analysis for the various types of bets you can make, whether it's prop bets, winner bets, daily fantasy. Looking at the pre-qualifying odds per BetMGM, Kyle Larson is the favorite, plus 425 for the race win. You've got Tyler Reddick at plus 650. Co-favorites at third, Denny Hamlin and Ryan Blaney are plus 700. William Byron at plus 900. So as we look at those top 5, a name that we mentioned last week that is missing is Christopher Bell. We also have, as you look at that top 5, there's only one name among those 5 that has not won a race over the last couple of times, and that is Tyler Reddick as well as Ryan Blaney. So you look at Larson, Hamlin, Byron as winners this year. And as we look at our favorites, Cole, it is a pretty good mix of those 5 drivers.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's safe to say, to kick off this favorites category, that Kyle Larson is officially back after a pretty slow start to his 2025 campaign. Once again, the odds-on favorite at plus 425. Most expensive driver in the daily fantasy field at $10,500, but for great reason. I mean, he's coming off his 4th top 5 of the season and his 4th straight top 10 going to Darlington, where he is a winner only once before, back in the fall of 2023, which is pretty shocking when you consider his resume at the Lady in Black. One of his best tracks, one of the tracks he's notorious for ripping the fence and being a player in, year out. 3 runner-ups and top fives in half of his 14 starts with a 10.8 average, good enough for second best overall. He also has the most laps led at Darlington with over 1,048 to be exact, which again speaks volumes, seeing as he has about 10 less starts than a lot of the guys like Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch, Brad Keselowski, Joey Logano. It's really good from a daily fantasy sense. And then you look at what he's done recently. He finished fourth with his most laps led in the fall of 2024. First and fourth are his only quality finishes, though, in the next-gen era. He has a 17.8 average with 392 laps led. The laps led statistic for the next-gen is the most in the series. 17.8 average kind of goes hand-in-hand with how we talked about Kyle Larson earlier in the show this season, and pretty much every year we go to track like Darlington or Homestead. It's a driver that you know is going to lead laps, that's going to run out front, but he's going to be so aggressive that it might be to his detriment at some point. So it's kind of like you take what you get with Kyle Larson. You know what you're going to get. He's going to have the speed, going to have a race-winning car. Just a matter of staying out of trouble and playing it smart and efficiently. And for that, he is a very high ceiling driver with a moderate floor, considering how aggressive he can get on this style of track. Someone who is very similar to Kyle Larson in that same vein is Tyler Reddick, another guy that we think of when we come to Darlington because you're able to rip the fence. And this is a cool one because when the odds opened up for this weekend, the top five shortest odds for the win, Tyler Reddick was not in the top five. And I was like shaking my head, like, what is Vegas doing right now? I want to say he was plus 1,000 or plus 1,200 at this point. So they kind of got smart here. He's plus 650 now with his second shortest odds for the race win. $10,200 in daily fantasy is a really steep value as well, but well worth it. Coming off a 14th place day at Martinsville, not something that many people would gloat about, but for someone like Tyler Reddick, who historically has struggled a lot at Martinsville, I would definitely take a top 15 finish from that race. Definitely.
Clearing your throat a lot. You got something going on there? You trying to declare the surefire race winner this week or what?
The allergies are brutal today. It was extremely windy and dusty. Was driving back and forth from the SpeedFreaks Lucas Oil Lounge, so it's not been a good day for Cole. But it's going to be a good day for Analysis, obviously. So that's standard. But back to Darlington. In the next gen, Tyler Reddick has 3 podium finishes, including 2 runner-ups. Second most laps led in the next gen as well. Most laps led in this race last year before finishing 32nd. And that brought his average finish down to 11.8, which is still really good considering the best average finish in the next gen is 10.7. So Tyler Reddick, I think he has a higher floor than Kyle Larson, but he's a very similar driver in the sense that he can rip the fence and he's always going to run up front and have race-winning speed. So I love Larson. I love Reddick. Those are my top 2 favorites for the Goodyear 400.
Yeah, those are obviously the two. I think they're the 2 obvious picks. I mean, you think about, like we talked about a couple of weeks ago with Homestead, the guys that rip the high line. You think of Kyle Larson, you think of Tyler Reddick, and here we are 2 weeks later. Obviously, those are the first 2 guys you think of. So it's some pretty easy decision making on your part. But I do like some of what you said in the sense of laps led, because laps led have been a strong indicator of who's going to be the players at these various tracks that we go to in this next gen car. And you talk about the laps that Kyle Larson has led, the laps that Tyler Reddick has led at Darlington. I'm looking at last week's race winner, Denny Hamlin, a guy that's got 1,000 laps led at the Lady in Black, and coming off of obviously the win last week, but also a 4-time winner at Darlington. And listen, it had been 10 years since he won at Martinsville. It's only been 4 years since he has won at Darlington, 2021. He has led laps in 10 straight races at this track. And I mentioned the 1,000 laps led. That's among 25 starts, which is the second most in the sport in terms of the laps led. 8.2 average finish, though, in those 25 starts, the highest among any active driver, which is extremely impressive at the track that is too tough to tame. And he has a 72% top 10 rate, which means 18 top 10s in 25 Darlington starts. That is a large sample size, a very high floor, and obviously with 4 wins and 1,000 laps led, it's also a high ceiling. Third most laps led at this track in the next gen era, which is 256. And he also has 3 top 10s, including a runner-up finish at this track in the next gen as well. So Denny Hamlin circles all the bases. He's your classic former winner at this track 4 times, recent winner this season, high floor with all the laps led and so many starts, and a high ceiling in being that he is a 4-time race winner at this track. And he has had such a great history, not just recently, but also in the long term at Darlington. So Denny Hamlin is as much of a slam dunk as you could possibly think of. And we talk about it a lot with him. He is a very momentum-driven, sort of temperamental driver. And you know that coming off of his big win at Martinsville, he is for certain going to be a player once again. And, it would have to take somebody basically eliminating him from the race or a mechanical failure for him to not finish in the top 5 here. So we'll talk more about big money bets in a second. But before we do that, we've named 3 drivers in this favorites category. It's 2025. So how could we move on from the favorites category without mentioning our favorite, William Byron, who has been a favorite, correct me if I'm wrong, every single week this season?
Yes, every single week.
Every single week. And there's good reason for that. The reason at Darlington is in spite of the fact that he finished 22nd last week at Martinsville. This was probably among every race this season the most disappointing and underwhelming performance of William Byron's season. Nonetheless, this week he's plus 900 for the race win, 9,900 in daily fantasy. But he is one of 4 drivers to place top 10 in 4 next-gen starts at Darlington. So he's had a knack for this track in this package, in this car, and he won here 2 years ago. Spring of 2023, he has led laps in 5 out of 6 starts at Darlington in the next-gen era. And he has, over that span of 6 races, the best average finish among any driver, 10.3 in the next-gen at Darlington. So William Byron going to be a favorite every single week. I don't know if there's anything that could change that unless he completely drops off the face of the earth and drops off a cliff this week. But you look at his stats at Darlington, he's been so consistent. It's got the win there a couple of years ago, laps led, again, circling all the bases. William Byron is a shoe-in for a top 5 and certainly a top 10 this week. And of course, he will be in contention for the race win.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, he probably should have 2 wins at Darlington in this next-gen car had he not been taken out by Logano that one year in 2022. So, by all accounts, this favorites category is very well-rounded. Kyle Larson, Tyler Reddick, Denny Hamlin, William Byron once again. I look for all 4 to be strong contenders for this race win, as well as these next 4 drivers we're about to mention here for our sleepers category.
Yeah, we're going to throw around the term sleeper a little bit loosely, and you're going to figure that out by the time I mention the first driver here. But listen, I think you painted the picture perfectly last week. My first sleeper is Christopher Bell. How could a driver that wins 3 straight races be a sleeper? Well, you painted the picture perfectly. We've seen it time and time again, his entire Cup Series career. He looks like the best driver on planet Earth for 5 weeks in a row. And then he looks like he might not even be deserving of a cup ride for 3 weeks in a row. And again, using that term very loosely, because for Christopher Bell, coming off of a career best 3rd place finish at Darlington in his last start there, he has tied for the second best average finish at Darlington in the next gen era of 10.7. There's not much that needs to be said for Christopher Bell. The only reason he is not one of our favorites is because of the recent lack of success, but he's still Christopher Bell. He is still the championship favorite. He is still the winningest driver in the sport this year, and he is still going to be probably the favorite for the championship, even at this point in the season. It just, for whatever reason, there's a lack of consistency in terms of, you win 3 races in a row. We're not asking you to win that 4th and 5th race in a row, but we're at least asking you to finish maybe top 5 or top 10. And for Christopher Bell, he's certainly capable of doing it here at Darlington. Plus 1,200 for the race win, just outside the top 5. 9,500 in daily fantasy. Christopher Bell is a driver that, again, he will be contending for the race win every week, no matter when, no matter where, no matter the circumstances. He is going to be in there. So we use the term sleeper extremely loosely when it comes to Christopher Bell. And, kind of recapping a little bit of the storylines last week, Cole, I'm looking at sleepers. Last week, we mentioned the name Joey Logano and how it was kind of a big prove-it week for Joey Logano. Because why? Well, he had finished top 10 in, 10 straight races at Martinsville, but he had not
11.
had a top 10, 11 straight at Martinsville. Make it 12. He finished top 10 once again. But prior to that, he had not finished top 10 yet this year, despite great speed. So for Joey Logano, we pointed that out. We said last week, something's got to give this week. And we think that was going to be the week where it gave. And sure enough, it did. He finished inside the top 10, despite having to overcome the Ross Chastain dynamics. And he was very vocal about that after the race. But now that they've gotten things back on track in that 22 camp, he's going to be in our sleepers category. The 22 is plus 2,200 for the race win, 9,300 in daily fantasy. He won the first next-gen race at Darlington and finished fourth there later that year. He finished eighth in the most recent next-gen race at Darlington, most recent race overall, which was his only top 10 since the win and the other top 5 the first year we came here in the next-gen era. Nonetheless, he is tied for Christopher Bell with the second best average finish at Darlington of 10.7 in the next-gen era. And over his entire career, which is 22 starts at Darlington, he has finished in the top 10 in 11 of ththose. So half his starts, he's finished in the top 10, and he has a 13.3 average finish. So Joey Logano, you're starting to see that very steady but consistent upward slope for a guy that showed speed the first few weeks of the season, finally cashed in with some semblance of a result last week at Martinsville, and certainly Martinsville leading into Darlington. This profiles as the kind of track that will let him sort of, jump on top of that and continue to improve those results and stack pennies, so to speak, as we look at here on the money stop. Christopher Bell, Joey Logano, two guys that are being very loosely thrown around as sleepers here. But I think that the only reason they're sleepers, Cole, is because they're probably just below that sector of 4 drivers we mentioned in the favorites.
They definitely are. I think in Bell's case, it's appropriate to call him a sleeper given his race winner odds at plus 1,200. And even his daily fantasy value of 9,500 for that is really, really solid and definitely an indicator of being more of a sleeper than a favorite. But I was also really surprised that he was not top 5 shortest in odds for this race win, considering his 10.7 second best in series average finish at this track. Also, the fact that he finished runner-up at Martinsville and the fact that he still won 3 consecutive races in 2025. So it's like Vegas kind of forgot that, but we certainly did not. So we were going to definitely include him on this outline. Come hell or high water, sleeper or favorite, he was going in there. Logano as well. I've been impressed with what I've seen from him all year in regards to speed. Results finally look like they're going his way with Martinsville as an indicator, hopefully, and with success previously at Darlington and especially recently, things bode well for that 22 bunch. But 2 guys I'm looking at for this weekend as legitimate sleepers are 2 names that have really come into their own at this point in the season, kind of like Logano, but I think on a more successful scale. And I'm going to kick that off right now with Chase Briscoe. Chase Briscoe, $9,100 in daily fantasy. He is riding back-to-back top 10 finishes into the Lady in Black after what was a really tough go in his start with Joe Gibbs Racing. And this is the site of his last win. He won this the last race at Darlington this previous fall. So that was with Stewart Haas Racing, a team that was obviously, or that is not obviously in existence anymore. And now going to a powerhouse like Joe Gibbs Racing, who was coming off a win of their own at Martinsville. This should bode very well for that 19 team, a track where even Truex has seen a lot of success as well. So I think that they're going to be due for a great result here this weekend. And also taking into account that he has back-to-back top 5s at the Lady in Black, finished 5th in the spring and won the fall race. So Chase Briscoe has looked incredible as of late. I look for him to keep that up going into this track. And then finally, a driver that I would never expect to hear on this outline for a Darlington race maybe 3-4 years ago, Bubba Wallace. This was a track that he had so much trouble finishing races off at. He was abysmal at this track, but he has really come in to be one of the most consistent drivers at the Lady in Black. He is plus 1,800 for the race win and a really nice value for daily fantasy at $8,500. Riding back-to-back third-place finishes for the first time in his career into the Goodyear 400. He, along with William Byron, as we previously mentioned, is only one of 4 drivers with top 10s in 4 of 6 next-gen Darlington starts. So again, really shocking statistic there when you consider his history previously at this track. But that streak of 4 top 10s at this track includes a career-best 5th-place finish in the spring of 2023 and 37 laps led in his most recent start where he finished 16th. So Bubba Wallace, I don't think he might not have as good a shot at the win as guys like Bell, Briscoe, or Logano, but I think he's definitely going to be in line for potentially a top 5 day given his speed this season, and given how he's fared at Darlington in the next gen, he should be a shoo-in for a top 10 finish.
Yeah, Bubba's been a money stop superstar recently. We've mentioned him the last couple of weeks. Like as soon as we started talking about him, has been when he's really started to turn it up. And we're talking about him again this week. So your attention should definitely be peaked on Bubba Wallace. So that rounds out the sleepers. Seabell, Joey Logano, Bubba Wallace, Chase Briscoe. We move on to value picks now, Cole, which are guys that have a very outside chance for the win, but can be, there's value there, whether it be in terms of DFS, in terms of prop bets. I'll kick this one off. I want to talk about a guy that you're probably not expecting his name to be mentioned at all this week because of the disappointment that came from Martinsville. Eric Jones was disqualified from a 24th place finish last week. And in spite of that, he is a guy that you absolutely think of when we come to Darlington. And yet he's plus 8,000 for the race win, 7,500 in daily fantasy. But we're talking about Eric Jones here. He's won twice at Darlington, including most recently in the fall of 2022. And among 14 starts, he has top 10s in half of them, the most recent of which came in fall of 2023. And he has the 5th best average finish of any driver in the sport at this track in the next gen era of 13.2. So Eric Jones, it just feels like because of the, I guess, disappointment that's been recently, he's strongly and severely being undervalued this week, but not by us. Eric Jones should be at the very top of the top values of this entire week. And I'm curious to hear what you have to say about your drivers, but I don't know if there's a better driver value this entire week at Darlington than Jones, who's a 2-time race winner here. And his stats at this track and his performances at this track are light years above his career performances at any other track. And that's not including the fact that LMC, Legacy Motor Club, has had much better speed to start this year than in the past couple of seasons of this team's existence. So Eric Jones should be on the very top of your radar, especially when it comes to value picks. I'm going to throw another name out there, and that is Justin Haley, who has had himself some really good glimpses this year and in general in the Cup Series. He is plus 20,000 for the race win, and he is valued at 6,200 in daily fantasy. That's what makes him a value pick, the 6,200 in DFS, because he has had top 10s in all 3 spring starts at Darlington in the next gen era, including 1 top 10, which came this year, 4 top 20 finishes at Darlington, which equates to a 20.7 average finish, once again, above what his career average finish is. So for Justin Haley, his stats at Darlington significantly better than anywhere else on the circuit, save for a couple of top 5s at super speedways, but consistently he's been good here. We've seen glimpses of that speed. I think you get somebody who's an extreme outside chance of a top 5, top 10 in Justin Haley, and you get a slam dunk in Eric Jones. Eric Jones, 1,000% is my top value pick of the week, and I'd be surprised if you have anything to take away from that or make me think otherwise with your picks here.
I don't really. I mean, obviously, like you said, LMC's speed has been much more prevalent in 2025, especially when you look at John Hunter Nemechek. But I feel like it's mainly been from that camp and the 42 team. Results have been much harder to come by in regard to quality for Eric Jones outside of Daytona and the duels and whatnot. But I think one thing that we see time and time again, and we preach it every single season, the tracks that Eric Jones is good at, he's really good at. So it doesn't matter what he's done to this point in the season or whatever. Like, he's going to get a good result. So I think that he definitely has the best value probably in this category at $7,500 for daily fantasy. Definitely worth looking at for a top 10 prop, seeing as he's finished top 10 in half of his 14 starts. And then for Justin Haley, I kind of screwed you there. So he has 1 top 10 in 2025, 4 top 20 finishes in 2025, not in the next gen at Darlington.
Thanks a lot, scumbag.
I know. But that's all to say, the 20.7 average is still really good for a value pick, especially for somebody like Justin Haley, who's only $6,200 daily fantasy. So we're looking at the fact that there's a little bit of a fun fact there, and that he's finished top 10 in all 3 spring Darlington starts in the next gen.
For sure.
And the fact that his floor of like 20th, 21st place is really solid for his value in daily fantasy. But for my drivers for value picks. I'm going to go with one full stable here. I know it's kind of cheating the system here and giving you 3 drivers, but I have to mention all 3 Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing drivers. I'll start with the obvious here. My 2 favorites over the 3rd driver are going to be Ryan Preece and Chris Buescher because they've had the success in 2025, evidently over Brad Keselowski. They've been like a completely different zip code from the number 6 team, but beginning with Ryan Preece. Ryan Preece has been one of the standout drivers this season from a value pick perspective. He has 3 straight top 10s in 2025 going into this race. His boss, Brad Keselowski, won this race last year, and Chris Buescher also had a shot at the win in that race last year in the spring. But back to Ryan Preece. Tied a career best finish of 12th at Darlington in his last start here, and he's finished 17th or better in 3 of 4 next-gen starts. So that's a really good floor for a driver who was not competing at the best of his abilities, as we could see this year with RFK Racing. And considering this whole stable has had speed, as I'll get to here in a second, that makes me feel really good about Ryan Preece as a really good, safe value pick for daily fantasy. Really good value once again at $7,200 plus $5,000 for the race win. Back to Chris Buescher though, really quickly, plus $2,500 for the race win and a really nice value of $8,100 for daily fantasy. That is the only one that I would say maybe is a better value or equal value to Eric Jones, because Chris Buescher finished 6th in his last Darlington start, and that was his 3rd top 10 in 4 next-gen Darlington starts. And the only outlier, as I alluded to, was the one where he led 21 laps late and was screwed out of a shot at the win that his boss went on to win in Brad Keselowski. So he's been, I think, silently one of the best drivers at Darlington in this next-gen era. And the numbers point to that. And again, he's coming off a pretty abysmal race at Martinsville, got into some trouble with Noah Gragson, but nonetheless, he's been one of the more consistent drivers as a whole in 2025. And now, while I feel better about the 2 drivers I just mentioned, I think I respect Brad Keselowski too much to not have him mentioned on this episode. And I think there are enough numbers and value to back up why I'm about to mention Brad Keselowski as the final value pick this week. $8,000 in daily fantasy speaks volumes to how this team has performed in 2025, because he is the reigning winner of this race. The last race of his career so far came this time in the Goodyear 400 at Darlington, plus $2,500 for the race win, like his teammate Chris Buescher. He has top 10s in 4 next-gen starts at Darlington, 14th his most recent time out, and he is a 2-time winner at this track with an 11th place average finish, good enough for 3rd best overall in 22 starts. And he has an 11th place average finish in the next gen as well. So what that tells me that those 11th place average finishes in his career and the next gen is that he is a very consistent, well-rounded driver at Darlington, regardless of the equipment, regardless of how he's performing up to snuff to this point when they go to the track. So while I don't have as much confidence as him over the 60 or the 17, I think we have to mention Brad Keselowski as the reigning race winner, and for someone who has some of the best stats in the series at this track, historically and in the next gen.
So you're completely in on RFK this week.
I am, especially on Ryan Preece and Chris Buescher, but
sure.
I think it should be a really solid race all around for that team. And even like I mentioned it earlier in the show, I think Ford as a whole usually performs really well at this track. I mean, Chase Briscoe won the last race here in a Ford for Stewart-Haas Racing. So I know they haven't been the best this season. Logano still searching for his first win, Ryan Blaney as well. But there definitely has been speed on their side this season in 2025, and it could boil to a head this weekend in the 400.
So we usually give a dozen drivers, but we'll give you a baker's dozen this week with the entire RFK stable as value picks. Recapping things here, our favorites were Larson, Reddick, Hamlin, Byron. Our sleepers were Bell, Logano, Wallace, Briscoe, and our values were Jones, Haley, Keselowski, Preece, and Chris Buescher. So with that, let's dwindle this down to 6 drivers. Cole, I'm going to take Denny Hamlin from our favorites category. I will take Christopher Bell from our sleepers, and I'll take an emphatic Eric Jones from the value picks.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to go with Kyle Larson as my favorite, Chase Briscoe as my sleeper, and Chris Buescher as my value pick.
What about prop bets here? I think we say it a lot, but I like reiterating it every other episode or so. I think when you're betting NASCAR right, you're not just doing winner picks, you are dispersing your money across different types of bets, whether it be over unders, which are called better or worse on apps like Grid Rival. You're doing top fives, top tens, big money bets, as we like to call them, because you can throw a larger unit. But as we look at some big money bets, why don't we just start there, Cole? Top 10, top 5 bets. What are your favorites this week as we look at those 13 drivers we mentioned and maybe what's on the table per the odds makers?
Yep, just to rehash last week and kind of gloat about our success, we successfully predicted Ryan Preece and Bubba Wallace to finish top 10, which was a plus 110 payout, so just above even. The only one that did not hit was Josh Berry to finish top 10. So we did a really good job last week forecasting those picks. The values for Darlington are going to be in the top 5 prop finisher range. And that has to kick off with Denny Hamlin at even plus 100. I don't even know how or why Vegas has him valued like that. As you mentioned during your analysis, very temperamental driver, very momentum driven. For a guy that has 4 wins at Darlington and for a guy that's coming off a win of his own in 2025 at Martinsville, that should be a lock, a guarantee that Denny Hamlin finishes top 5. I don't know what they were thinking there. William Byron finished top 5, plus 110 payout. Again, he has the best average finish of all drivers in the next gen at 10.3. I know we're looking for a top 5 out of him. For someone who has 1 here in the next gen, probably should have 2 wins here at Darlington in the next gen. Seems like a no-brainer. And then finally, very high on Chase Briscoe this weekend. Back-to-back top 10s in 2025. Back-to-back top 5s and the reigning race winner at Darlington. His top 5 prop is plus 190. I think all 3, I'm going to call right now, are going to hit. Those should be no-brainers for anybody listening right now.
Yeah, this feels like a week where the big money bets and some of the prop bets are, like you said, they're kind of sure things. There's just certain weeks, it happens every once in a while, where these are very much a part of the way I'm looking to bet this week. Those are the big money bets, top 5s. As we look at some better or worse bets, as I mentioned before, Cole, these are like over-unders on Grid Rival, which you can download on the App Store, and it's a really great betting app that, as far as I know, it's the only major sports book that can allow you to bet over-under / better worse type bets. And these are kind of like run props in baseball, over under 5.5 runs, or like points totals in football, over and under 21.5 total points, but instead it's finishing positions in NASCAR. So looking at what we have on the table this week, Cole, what sticks out to you?
Yep. Again, to rehash last week, very successful weekend for over-under, better, worse bets. Kyle Larson finished 5th or better. Ryan Preece finished 12.5 or better, and Brad Keselowski finished worse than 12.5. So great weekend of analysis there. Got 3 more here for you guys that I feel pretty solid about. Want to restate my confidence in William Byron's top 5 prop for a big money bet. There is a 1 position buffer here for over-unders because his prop is 6.5. So I have William Byron better than 6.5, so 6th place or better. Feel great about Bubba this weekend. Back-to-back top 3 finishes, top 10.5 his next-gen starts. He's finished top 5 here in 2023. His prop is 9.5, as well as Chase Briscoe, 9.5. Want to restate my confidence in Chase Briscoe once again as well. So both those drivers, Bubba and Briscoe, better than 9.5. Feel really good about those 3.
I do as well. I think that, like you said last week, a lot of times we go with the overs on a lot of these, but you kind of proved the concept where you picked the under on Brad Keselowski's 12.5 prop last week, and that certainly paid off. So those are all drivers we mentioned. Those are all drivers we feel good about. It's not a surprise that you choose them as well. Any loose change, anything we haven't talked about? We always go with the money themes on a lot of our segment names, but we've talked about a lot. We've talked about the who's who of our top 5 and top 10 in odds. I don't know that there's a ton this week. I mean, if there's one storyline we haven't really touched on, and not necessarily a positive one, maybe it's Ty Gibbs, in that he has become, we've talked about it a little bit over the course of the last few weeks, just the longest losing streak, I guess you can call it, since of any driver that has come new to Joe Gibbs Racing. And for me, I'm just really surprised by it. I don't know if this is relevant at all to the analysis this week at Darlington, but if we're covering loose change, I'm thinking of like major storylines in the sport and seeing that Ty Gibbs has gone winless in, what is it, his first 78 or 79 races in the Cup Series for Joe Gibbs Racing. It's definitely surprising. And I had a lot of faith last year. I'm sort of running out of it. I'm not completely out of faith, but feels kind of random to bring this up, but it's just the loose change, big storyline that maybe people would like to hear our opinion on the saga that has been the beginning of Ty Gibbs' Cup Series career.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like he's lost his edge. I think
Yeah.
a big part of that is because he made the jump to Cup and probably wanted to be the bigger man and not be as aggressive as he was in the Xfinity Series. I mean, you look at his Xfinity Series days; he was winning like every single race, but he was also very aggressive, and he was not making a great name for himself amongst the competitors and his peers. So, I feel like maybe if he got a little more aggressive, like he was back then, that he'd be in a better position to win races or run up front. And you're seeing that with guys like Carson Hocevar. Carson Hocevar, he's not making many friends, but he's still contending for top tens, and he's had shots at in the Cup Series. So maybe it's time for the old Ty Gibbs to come out of his shell and be more aggressive. I know maybe that people don't want to hear that, but it would make things more exciting, and it might make him a little bit better in the results column. But I think it also is kind of relevant to Darlington, just because he finished runner-up in this race last year. Led a
Great
lot of
point.
laps as well.
Didn't even realize that.
If this race was maybe 5 laps long, he might have beaten Brad Keselowski. So it is worth mentioning. Kudos to you on that. But I think my big thing with Ty Gibbs is that he's kind of lost his edge. Maybe needs to start using the bumper a little bit more to kind of make more of a name for himself at the top level. But
It's very fair to say.
yeah, that's
Very
about
fair
it.
to say. I'm going to throw a baseball quote in here because, as we've discussed before, I work in professional baseball, and my season starts this week. I've been going through some media days, talking to a lot of our players and coaches at the Yankees AA level, and one of our top prospects, Spencer Jones, he's the Yankees' first-round pick from a couple of years ago, was assigned back to AA. He had a quote that kind of resonates with what we're talking about here, and he's a guy that spent all of last year at AA. A lot of people thought, and he probably would have expected to be in AAA at this time to start the new season. But the way he kind of put it to the media this week is, I'd rather be 2 weeks late than 2 months late than 2 months early, meaning I'd rather kind of be ready to conquer that next level as opposed to 2 months early where you're getting called up and you might not be completely adjusted to the different trials and tribulations that come with that next level of baseball. Contrastly, for someone like Ty Gibbs, he's still so young. And I feel like he was dominating the ARCA series and the Xfinity series and everything he was put in at such a young age. But I feel like you got to reel it back in sometimes and just think to yourself, man, if he had come to the Cup Series maybe a year later and had that much more polish on him, he might have been that 2 months early, so to speak, as opposed to that 2 months late. It's just something that resonates with any player or any driver, any professional athlete that's called up to their level, their next level in a given sport at such a young age. And that's something that I was thinking about this week. I thought about Ty Gibbs, and it certainly makes sense. It feels like kind of a parallel for any young athlete that maybe got called up a little bit too early. You see it in every sport where maybe somebody went pro a year sooner than they should have, or they got called up a year sooner than they should have. There's going to be trials and tribulations. And I feel like with Ty Gibbs, it's going to get to that breakout point. Like once he figures it out at this level, he's going to be just as good and just as dominant as he was at the lower series. It's just going to take a little bit longer. And as you said, maybe that starts with him just laying the bumper a little more, being a little more aggressive, laying into more of his traditional and organic racing style that we haven't seen. He hasn't looked himself these last couple of years. And I think it could happen at some point. It's just been tough to watch as of right now. Moving on along though here, Cole, head-to-head driver parlays. Some of these are like spreads. You can have a little bit of a positional buffer. We had one successful last week. Bubba Wallace, we had chosen to finish within one spot of Alex Bowman at Darlington. He sure did. That is a success. When you look at the head-to-head driver matchups this week, what are you looking at?
Yeah, this week. So we only had one last week, and we were successful in that one.
1 for 1, batting 1,000.
Yep, and I only have one again this week because they're not very enticing as far as all around sense. But Christopher Bell within 2.5 spots of Ryan Blaney. I love that one. This is the guy that finished runner-up this past week in Martinsville. It's a guy that finished third here for his career best finish in the most recent Darlington start. And I kind of mentioned it earlier, going through the top 5 shortest odds for the race win. Ryan Blaney's still in this conversation, and yet it puzzled me that it was him in there and over Christopher Bell, because his numbers at Darlington really aren't that good. And I'm going to pull them up right now. Only 3 top 10s in 16 starts. He has back-to-back DNFs there, and prior to that, his best finish in the next gen's 9th place, which happened twice. So, like, I really don't understand why he's that short of a bet to win this race. But what Vegas is misinterpreting, we're definitely going to take advantage of here. For that reason, we have Bell as a sleeper and mentioned on the show over Ryan Blaney, and that's why I'm picking Bell over Blaney this weekend for a head-to-head parlay. And again, while it's only one, Revival has a really cool feature where you can parlay the head-to-head matchups with the better, worse, over/under positional props. So if you like Briscoe and Bubba to finish their 9.5 better or worse, then you can parlay that with the Bell over Blaney. But I do like that one a lot this weekend.
And, this is one of those weeks where it feels good to parlay a few of those together. I feel like we don't say that every week, but that's certainly the case this week. We got some unfinished business, though. Daily fantasy lineup recommendation. Looking at, we haven't talked a ton about the DFS values this week, Cole. I know it was a tough week last week in terms of, how Vegas was valuing certain drivers. But looking at this week, a couple different variations of the lineup, but I'll let you take it away on this one.
Yeah, another pretty difficult week, and that's why I also wanted to give you 5 value picks as opposed to our normal 4, because it is very top-heavy once again. And I think, as opposed to last week where Ryan Blaney was the favorite and he had not led a lot of laps at Martinsville despite having all the wins, he was somebody that we didn't feel like we needed to have in our lineups. I felt like this is a week where you want Kyle Larson in your lineups despite his maybe low floor, because he has the laps leading ability as well as somebody like Denny Hamlin. So with that in mind, I have 3 different versions of this lineup here. But the 3 commonalities are Chase Briscoe, Bubba Wallace, and Chris Buescher. Feel great about those 3 drivers for this weekend. And from there, you can get creative with it. For our definitive lineup, I had Hamlin as our ace, coming off his race win. And for someone who has 1,000 laps led at this track, laps led in 10 straight starts at Darlington seems like a really smart bet to make, or someone to have in your lineup. I also have Brad Keselowski as one of our second least expensive driver, just being the most recent winner at this track in this race in the spring, and given his history at this track and his results in the next gen. And then I also have Justin Haley as our cheapest driver, which I feel like can rub people the wrong way. And for that, I have a few different variations of how you can have this constructed from the bottom half of the lineup per se. Again, keeping Briscoe, Bubba, and Buescher in mind for these next 2 I'm about to mention, you are able to get Kyle Larson in your lineup as your ace if you compensate Brad Keselowski for Ryan Preece, who, again, I feel better about this weekend, and if you keep Justin Haley in your lineup. And again, Justin Haley might be a name that you don't feel great about, just given his overall history in the Cup Series. So if you want to take it a step further, there is a way where you can have Christopher Bell as your ace in this lineup. Christopher Bell as your ace. Keep Ryan Preece in there as the second cheapest driver. And then you have Eric Jones as your cheapest option here. So I think those are 3 pretty solid lineups you can choose between. Again, we'd like to kind of choose drivers that we mentioned throughout the show, just to restate our confidence in the 12 or 13 in this case that we highlighted. So bunch of different ways you can go with it, but there is a way to have a Hamlin, Larson, or Bell as your ace this weekend for daily fantasy.
Yeah, and to be honest, I do like the Larson and Preece lineup better than the Hamlin and Keselowski one. I don't feel bad about any of those variations that you mentioned, but I love the idea of putting Kyle Larson in there. And, I've been very outspoken about my, the impressions that Ryan Preece has made on me. And of course, you said the same over the last couple of weeks as well. He's just been extremely impressive these last couple of weeks. where we have continued to nail our picks, Cole. It's time to put our money where our mouth is and pick our race winner and our sleeper picks. You take it away first this week.
Wow, damn. Okay. I'm going to go outside the box here, and I'm going to go with someone who is a gut call. I was going to go with Kyle Larson, but that would be 3 straight weeks in a row. That's not going to happen. I'm going to go with a sleeper in Chase Briscoe. I have a really good feeling that 19 car will get back to victory lane, and it'll be his 2nd straight win at Darlington.
It's funny because I was picking Kyle Larson all the way, and I'm looking up and down this list. I honestly feel really good about Chase Briscoe too. I don't know what it is, if it's a gut call, if it's a little bit of what you said to convince me. I feel really good about Briscoe this week, man. But I am taking Kyle Larson. He is my pick. And as I have first pick at a sleeper, which is any driver outside the top 15 in winner odds, I'm going to take Eric Jones.
Very nice. I'm going to go right down to the 15th shortest odds for the race win, and Chris Buescher. Again, feel great about that team, great about that driver. 3 top 10s here over his last 4 starts. Probably should have a win in between there as well. So give me the 19, give me the 17.
Well, this is the Goodyear 400. It is among 2 Darlington race weekends. It's the fun one, so to speak. The next one, around the playoffs is a lot more pressure. It's a lot more intensity, a lot more strategy. This is throwback weekend where you're going to get to see a lot of really cool cars on the track. I can't end this episode without talking about how excited I am to see the 48, a throwback to the 200th race win back in 2012 that Jimmy Johnson ran and got that 200th win at Darlington. It's going to be so badass to see that for me on the 48 car. I'm openly going to be rooting to see that one back in victory lane this week. It's anytime we go to Darlington, you kind of get that throwback vibe in the air, but especially this week for throwback weekend with a lot of the paint schemes. That's sort of the elephant in the room we haven't mentioned a ton. We've talked a lot about what to expect on the track, kind of along the lines of like results-wise, but cosmetically, visually, this is one of the most exciting races of the season to watch.
It totally is. I love the 48. My personal favorite's got to be Kyle Larson's Labonte throwback to the Kellogg's Frosted Flakes car. Looks absolutely unbelievable. Just so on point. Every detail on that thing is just perfect. It pops. I really want to see that one in victory lane, honestly. I just think that would be a really cool race to win diecast. And it looks awesome. But there's a bunch of really good ones this week, actually. It's a very strong throwback weekend for paint schemes. You can't say that every single year, but there's some really cool ones this week.
We might have to do some legwork on this, but doesn't it just feel like every time there's these awesome throwback paint schemes, it happens to be one of the lame non-throwbacks that wins? It just feels that way. I don't know if there's any science to that or not.
I feel like a majority of them that have won have not been throwbacks, honestly, yeah, since they've done the throwback weekend, which is very bizarre. Maybe there's something to that. Maybe that's why teams aren't doing it as much now, but I like it.
Again, just to go back to the Ally one for a second, you gotta love a company that's going to embrace the past, the throwback, and go a little bit outside of the lines like Ally to pay ode to what was a historic win in the team's history, and it looks a lot like the Cobalt car we saw him run back then. But that's part of the fun of this week. It's Darlington. It's the Goodyear 400. And it is this weekend on Saturday night, 3:05 Eastern time. Excuse me, Sunday, right? Isn't it Sunday?
It's Sunday.
It is Sunday at 3:05. So it's a typical Sunday night throwback weekend. We will drop the jack on this week's edition of The Money Stop, your most important NASCAR betting stop of the day. Hopefully you can continue to bank out with us in what's been an extremely successful beginning to the season. Follow on social media at @the_money stop. If you're watching with us visually, you can see Cole's account, my account as well, both on X. That's where we are most active. We're also active on Facebook, Instagram, you name it. We've got all the developing storylines happening as well. But we want to thank you all so much for tuning in. Freak Nation, whoever you may be tuning in, everybody, we're so grateful for all the support, and it's been a really exciting year so far. So we'll drop the jack, as any great Money Stop does. For Cole, I'm Steven, and the rest of the Money Stop, Speed Freaks, Kicking the Tires crew. We'll see you next week.